Imagine that you know this woman that you really want to get involved with romantically. However, you feel like sometimes she can be a bit obnoxious or annoying, and you wish she would tone things down a few notches. You decide that you will pursue it, but you want to also make sure that she tones things down, and you set up an action plan for yourself to essentially manipulate her into quieting down and being a bit more subservient. You start by getting to know her a bit better. You make sure you are the picture-perfect date and give her everything she wants. You lavish her with gifts and make sure that she always feels listened to. You are listening, but you are only listening because you need weapons to use against her in the future. Perhaps she mentions that she had a poor upbringing and is not in contact with any family any longer. She has a few friends, but most of her time is simply spent between work and home, where she lives with her cat. You do not really like cats much but are willing to tolerate it. Over time, you earn her trust, and occasionally, you mention how annoying it is to be dealing with people that are louder than they need to be. You say that you find women that have to get the last word to be shrill and obnoxious. She seems mildly put off by this, but nothing happens. After a few weeks, you notice that she seems to be quieting down a bit. You can't tell if she is simply stressed out as she has been working a lot, or if she is beginning to internalize what you have said. When she is quiet, you praise her, telling her you love how attractive and gentle she is, and that she is the perfect picture of femininity. When she is too loud for your liking, you frown, but do not say a word. Eventually, she is simply quieter. She does not seem interested in rocking the boat, and she does not mention anything being wrong either. You effectively convinced her to quiet down simply through the use of your own words to infiltrate her mind and install those thoughts of insecurity surrounding the idea of being loud. Imagine that you sell cars for a living. You like your job well enough. You are good at it and tend to land sales pretty regularly. However, you have been studying recently and found out that if you were to use your own methods of convincing the other party that you know best, you would have a pretty good chance at ensuring that they are more likely to buy what you are suggesting. All you need to do is establish yourself as an expert and drop some hints down about how other people in their position bought the car that you are attempting to sell them versus the car that they are interested in. You go in one day and see that you have an appointment that afternoon with someone who was interested in buying a new car. They specified that they really wanted an older minivan in the message they left on your machine. You keep that in mind. But looking at the price, you realize that it would not net you a very nice commission bonus, and you decide that is the perfect attempt to use your dark persuasion techniques that you have read about recently. They come in, and you immediately greet them. You make mention of the fact that you have been selling cars for the last decade and that you have had the very same van that they are interested in, but you hated it. You line out several issues that you claim that you have had and then gently redirect them toward a newer, and consequentially, more expensive SUV. It still has the same number of seats, but the newer car has more features and is nicer. They seem to resist the suggestion, but after a few attempts and telling them that you got into a car accident in that car and the airbag malfunctioned, as well as several other comments meant to make them feel unsafe in the van, they finally relent, though you can see that they are visibly uncomfortable with the amount of money they will be financing. Ultimately, you got what you wanted. They took the car because they eventually relented to your authority on the subject. However, in forcing the point, they do not seem particularly confident in you as a salesperson, and you are not likely to get another sale from them in the future, nor are you likely to get good reviews. The good news, however, is that you got the bonus that you wanted. Emotional manipulation with dark psychology. Now, Imagine that you have decided that you are going to be giving a speech at a fundraiser. You really need to make enough money to cover the cost of the fundraiser, and then funds to also give to the cause as well. You know this, and you realize that the amount of money that you needed is actually far higher than it otherwise would have been had you chosen to do something simpler. The cause you are raising money for is to help provide food and shelter to victims of domestic violence and their young children for the holidays. You went all out because you wanted to create a nice Christmas party, but now you realize that the bar has been set far higher. You need to make even more money. Thinking about it, you realize that the best way to get the money is to really appeal to emotions. When you push an appeal to emotion, you will effectively be guilting the people out of their money, making them feel like they are lucky to not be in a situation rife with violence and instability. When it comes time for the fundraiser, you lay on the guilt, bringing out stories of people fleeing domestic violence and how they often leave with no money or belongings beyond the clothing on their backs. You really lay on the guilt, and eventually, you do happen to meet your quota that you needed, all by telling sob stories and over-exaggerating about the people you have been helping recently. Sure, some people do have it as bad as you have spoken about, but not most of the ones that you have helped as of late. Nevertheless, the end result is perfect for you. You succeeded, and everything balanced out. When you analyze body language with dark psychology, you are doing so in order to understand vulnerabilities. You will make it a point to look for signs that the other person is uncomfortable or afraid of interacting further. You want the other person to be just unsettled enough to be easily controlled. You want them to be on edge because then they will be far more likely to be agreeable in the first place. Ultimately, people who feel like they are uncomfortable or unsettled, or like they are at a disadvantage tend to be more agreeable. They are easier to convince for one specific reason. Their minds are so busy figuring out how best to keep themselves safe and end that discomfort that they are too preoccupied to truly defend themselves from the manipulation attempts. This means that with their minds busy and them feeling off-balanced, they can be controlled with ease. The dark psychology user is going to know this, and they will look for signs that the other person is uncomfortable, so they know that they can lash out. They will see that the other person is likely to be more susceptible and strike right then. Remember, the dark psychology user, when they are truly trying to manipulate someone else, are acting as predators. They will intentionally lash out and hurt other people whenever they can if it means that they will get their way, and they have no qualms about it. They do not care that they are taking advantage of other people, so long as they get what they want in the end. In particular, when they are finally able to get a read on someone else, dark psychology users tend to use other techniques as well. They may mirror in order to create the impression of a good relationship between themselves and their target far quicker than before. They may use their body language to create anchor points, a technique that is specific to neuro-linguistic programming but oftentimes taken in by dark psychology users. They will watch as they can trigger people to say yes simply by inclining their heads. They will see exactly how all of this comes together to make them far more likely to actually persuade someone than they thought that they could ever be. The dark psychology users are skilled when it comes to understanding people, and whether they have developed this skill innately and naturally picked up on the most obvious cues, or because they have intentionally taught themselves how to read other people, they use this skill to their advantage. One of the more popular techniques that can be used for influence is mirroring. This is another NLP skill that often gets utilized because it works upon the idea that people who trust each other tend to mirror each other's behaviors and movements back and forth. For example, if you see a husband and wife sitting across from each other to eat dinner, you will probably notice that one of them is probably constantly shifting their movements to match the other. When the wife takes a drink, the husband takes a drink a few seconds later. When one shifts to the left, the other shifts to mirror them. When one takes a bite, the other takes a bite, and so on. This is because they have a close relationship. Spouses are incredibly close when their relationship is a healthy one. Mirroring does not require that level of intimacy to occur, however. It can occur far sooner when the beginning of the relationship is sparked. Two people who are actively interested in each other and who have some degree of trust in one another are likely to be mirroring each other, even if their acquaintanceship is still quite new. All that matters is that they believe that the other person is not going to hurt them and that they are on the same page with everything that they have discussed and decided upon thus far. This means, then, that people will naturally mirror people as their relationship builds. However, people also have a tendency to reciprocate their own behaviors back and forth. If one person gives a gift, the other person feels obligated to do the same. This is known as the principle of reciprocity. You can sort of trigger this sense of reciprocity in someone else as well simply by starting the mirroring process artificially. If you can effectively mirror the other person, you can usually get them to mirror you back, and as soon as that mirroring relationship is built up, you have that access to the other person's unconscious mind that you were seeking to get. This means that when you move, they move. Now, consider for a moment what that would imply. If you can effectively trigger your mind to behave or feel a certain way just because you had moved like you feel that way, such as smiling to make you feel better, even when you were actually quite sad, you can then get the other person to move with you. You can convince them to do things simply because they are locked into your own body language. Unconsciously, they are following your lead, so if you wanted to nod your head while asking a question, you would make them feel more likely or inclined to nod their head as well. You would effectively take over their mind for them and allow you to make all of the decisions yourself. Of course, all of this depends upon you learning to mirror the other person. Thankfully, mirroring is not particularly difficult. You can learn to mirror someone else with relative ease, so long as you know what you are doing. Remember, doing this is sort of creating an artificial bond between yourself and the other person. It is not quite the same as developing that rapport naturally and incrementally in the way that it would normally be built. Instead, it is designed to be far quicker. The other person will never be able to tell the difference, though. In fact, they will likely be entirely unaware of it happening unless they were also trained in dark psychology or NLP. There are 4 easy steps when you want to mirror someone. You will first trigger a connection between yourself and the other person. Then, you will spend the time to match their speech patterns. Thirdly, you will attempt to identify what is known as the other person's punctuator. And finally, you will test to make sure that the relationship has been triggered. Thank you for watching our video.